Wow, so we're in your biology and we're going on to nutrition and digestion. And we're going to be talking about nutrients and nutrition. See how that apple is? Apple is one of the healthiest things you can eat. It used to say an apple a day keeps the doctor away. So let's go down here and we're going to talk about types of nutrients. Well, first of all, nutrients, what are they? And what really is nutrition? Well, we know that our body has complex machinery in our cells that we can't even see. And our bodies need constant maintenance all the time. And these structural proteins and these enzymes must be repaired or replaced all the time. Our cells are these power plants and factories, and we must have the fuel and service for these little factories inside our body. Together with all these chemical processes of life are the body's metabolism. So the body's metabolism, you know, is what keeps our body going continually in manufacturing and replacing these worn out little power plants and factories in our body. Metabolism requires fuel, and not only fuel, but raw materials for food, certain things which supply our body with nutrients. And so we're going to talk about these nutrients now and what we need in our diet, and to look at them. Why do we need these things in our diet? Let's see why. So first we're going to talk about, and your book talks about calories. So we're going to talk about calories up here, and here's where let me point to it here, calories. So calories with a capital C. In physics, we know calories with a small c, which are 1,000th the big calorie. But we're going to go, when we talk about our body, we're going to talk about calories with a capital C. So 1 calorie is the amount of energy needed to raise the temperature of 1 kilogram or liter of water by 1 degree centigrade. 1 degree centigrade equals 4 degrees centigrade here, so you can go by Fahrenheit if you want, or 4 degrees Fahrenheit. So we're going to go by centigrade because that's what scientists do. So to raise 1 liter of water by 1 degree centigrade. That's how you measure calorie. And calories measure what? What do calories measure? Calories measure energy, our energy. That's a measure of energy. So what does this calorie in our body do? What's 1 calorie do in our body? Well, they say 1 calorie is about as much as rising from your chair right now and walking 8 feet and then returning and sitting down. You'll use 1 calorie. So that's how you use just 1 calorie. So the more calories that you are consumed, if you get too many calories and eat too many calories, what happens? We know it changes to this. Let me go up and so you can see it better. It's kind of gross, isn't it? Well, it's adipose cells. Well, adipose cells are not too bad. You got to have some fat in your body because you'll need it for storage and maybe need it at a later time. And a lot of things in your body need to have padding of fat. But obesity, too much fat, is what happens. And obesity can cause heart disease, mainly heart disease, things of the heart, and also can cause some kinds of cancers. So you have to limit calories if you're on that side. But if you don't get enough calories and you need a little more, you can be too thin. And if you're too thin, you don't have enough energy to keep your body going. So you have to keep in a balance, right? So we're going to look at these things here in your nutrient and the functions of these nutrients. I'm going to go into them a little bit here quickly. Carbohydrates are nutrients and they provide us energy. They're the major energy providers in our body. And proteins, they provide the raw materials to build our tissue. Proteins are those little builders that come in, they're building up parts of our cell and building our organs and proteins. And the difference between these two is proteins have nitrogen in them than carbohydrates, and we're going to go into that a little bit more. Fats and oils provide energy and raw materials to build tissues too. We know that. You need them especially for your nervous system. So if you're low on fats and oils and you're undernutritioned, it'll affect your nerves in all different parts of your body, your nervous system. Vitamins are necessary for growth and body function. Each vitamin is going to usually coexist or co-help, I should say, be co-helpers with your nutrients. And minerals, they regulate body functions and provide materials for bones, tooth and constructions, and muscle contraction. So we need these here. We need vitamins, minerals, and of course we need water. If we didn't have water, we'll just dehydrate and die, because water is most important. It provides a medium for chemical reactions and transport of materials and many other things too. And we'll get into that in a little bit too. So that's what we're going to talk about right real quick here in this chapter. Macronutrients. Okay, so we're going to talk about macro. There's macro. Macro means bigger, and we're going to talk about micro. So what's the difference between macro and micro? Macro means big and micro means little. That's all. That's the difference. Macronutrients are the body's source and energy of building materials that you need a lot of. And then micro are these tiny, essential, smaller amounts, but you also need them too. But they're very, very in small amounts. And then, of course, the body also requires water here. So we're going to talk about the micro. Micronutrients are usually vitamins and minerals, micro. And we're going to talk about the macro. So let's talk about the macro right now. We're going to talk about carbohydrates first. So look at here. So this is amino acids. We're going to talk about them. Amino acids have to do with protein. So let's talk about carbohydrates. Then we'll go on to these. So carbohydrates, let's see. Okay. So carbohydrates, first of all, they're most important in energy, to give you energy. You need carbs to give you energy. All carbs are organic. What do we say about they're all organic? The word organic. See, I don't see it on here, but they're all organic. And what organic means? Oh, here's the word organic compounds. They're all organic compounds. And so what does that mean about being organic? Organic basically means that the carbs are in organic compounds consisting of certain elements, which is carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So we have carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and they're in a ratio of 1 to 2 to 1. So basically carbon, 1, 2 hydrogen, and oxygen in different ratios. So think of carbohydrates, you think of carbon. It's almost in the word carbon, and hydrogen's in there too. So it's carbon and hydrogen, and then oxygen moved in there. So like common sugars, here's glucose. This is pretty important here. I'm pointing right here, glucose, C6H12O6. That's the formula. You see how it's 6 then times 2, 1 to 2 to 1. You see the ratio there of sugars, and those are common sugars. So most are in chains, but some of them are more ball-like than chain-like, but most in chains. So we have these types of sugars here. We have glucose, we have fructose. Glucose is simple sugar. And then we have fructose, which comes from fruit and vegetables. And we have lactose, which comes from milk sugars. And we have maltose, which is found in different grains. We also have sucrose. The difference between glucose and sucrose is our table sugar. The refined sugars from sugarcane produce sucrose. The sugar in our blood is glucose. Glucose is the sugar in our blood. The blood sugars are called glucose, and that's what we talk about. But when you're taking sugar and putting sugar on your cereal, it's sucrose right there. So, and then we have what's called polysaccharides. We have monosaccharides. Okay, so we have monosaccharides are simple sugars. Mono means simple, means one, right? And then we have, here's monosaccharides, and then we have disaccharides, means 2 monosaccharides. These are simple carbohydrates. But most carbohydrates are not simple at all. In fact, most carbohydrates form long chains of simple carbohydrates together, and they're found in many things. So complex carbohydrates are found in things like bread, cereal, pasta, potatoes, rice, all those different kinds of things. There are two main types of polysaccharide. There's two main types of polysaccharides, and these are starch. So starch, and it's a mixture of plant cells that we eat, starchy things. Those are polysaccharides, and then there's dietary fiber. So let's talk about dietary fiber here. It's kind of in italics. Well, dietary fiber is very important because it's not really digested, but it's like the scouring pads of your digestive system, especially colon, because it helps in digesting food. And so as it scours out, it cleans out your colon. So we have soluble means that it turns into this gel, but it also in digestion, but soluble means that it's soluble in water. And then we have insoluble fiber, and that helps these undigested wastes, keeps your intestines clean and healthy. Cellulose is the primary component of plant cell's wall, and is very important for us to eat because it's that insoluble fiber, the fibers that keep our whole digestive system going and healthy. And a lot of things like that apple has a lot of cellulose in it. So let's go on. We're going to go on to proteins, and this is proteins. Let's go up to this pictures of protein now. You can see the pictures, okay? Proteins, what's the difference? Protein. Well, proteins are complex, organic molecules used to build and maintain living cells. Carbon, they're made of carbon, like before, like carbohydrates too, carbon and hydrogen, like carbohydrates, and oxygen too. Those are the same as carbohydrates, but they have an extra element in them called nitrogen. So the difference is they have nitrogen. See the N in there? They have a nitrogen in here. And so these nitrogen, they produce these amino acids. So if you take proteins and you break them down, they'll turn into amino acids. Those are the simple proteins. And these proteins are like little building blocks or cables or frameworks of the cell, are made of these proteins or amino acids. Proteins also make enzymes. What are enzymes? Enzymes are, they control the chemical reactions in our cell. Enzymes are very important, and they're made of protein with nitrogen in them. And some of the more complex proteins serve as big complex machines in these tiny cells. When I say big, they're big important, but they're very small. See things like pumps, actuators, monitors, sensors, molecular assemblers, and that carry on our life processes from our cell. Isn't that amazing how God put all these little tiny things in our body to work our cells so that we could be alive? How amazing. So amino acids are these simpler molecules that make up the proteins, and the proteins can be these amino acid chains, long chains of amino acids. Usually they're folded into like 3 dimensions. So they're folded, see how the 3 dimensions, very 3-dimensional, these amino acids. So here's the amino group. Let's see, as we go, you'll see here's the amino group right here, and here's the carboxylic acid group. So amino, that's why they're called amino acids, hooked together by these carbons. See how that one is? And here's some more, the same thing. They have this acid, which is carboxylic acid, or carboxylic acid, however you say it, carboxylic acid, and you'll have the amino acid, And here's some more, phenylalanine alanine and alanine. You see how they're put together, and they're all together. They all have nitrogen in them. Very important that they have nitrogen in it, and they're all hooked. This is another amino acid hooked on. They're all hooked on to others, so they're in these long chains. But you have this amino and then this acid, carboxylic acid there. Okay. So let's go on to the next. We went through proteins. We're going to go on to fats. We have carbohydrates, proteins, and now we have fats. So it says, going on, let's see. There are, let's talk about the amino acids just one more time. I forgot some things on it. So let's go back here. Wait, where are we? Okay, let's go back, because there's a couple things I didn't talk about with amino acids. It's very important with proteins. First of all, amino acids, they come in 21 different amino acids are combined. So you have 21 different kinds of these amino acids, and they're combined to produce the most complex molecules in our body. You think of DNA and such being amino acids, so complex. There's 21 different kinds of amino acids, but they're put together in hundreds or thousands combined together. So you have thousands of kinds. They're all similar to each other in type and number and arrangement of atoms are different. So they're all similar, but they have different arrangements, different patterns, different molecules. And you can see how different these are, even to the point of the most complex of proteins. So let's go on now to fats. Fats and other lipids. Here's a structure of a saturated fat molecule. So let's talk about fats here. So fats, fat oils, and fat-like substances are called lipids. Well, what are lipids? Well, lipids are just another name for fat cells, right? Lipids. Lipids are various groups of compounds characterized by one thing fats do not do. They are insoluble in water. They cannot dissolve in water. So they're very oily, and the oil and water do not combine. And lipids are used by the body to store energy and to build our cell parts. They also carry, what do they carry? They carry vitamins. What vitamins do they carry? Vitamins A, D, E, and K. And lipids also make up hormones. We wouldn't have any hormones if we didn't have these fats. So when you eat fats and stuff and it goes and make into lipids, it also is used, you can say, used in your hormones. So if you didn't have enough fat, your hormones would have a problem, which carry messages, which are very important. And then we have what the fats. The simplest type of lipid molecule is the fatty acid. That's the simplest. As proteins break down into amino acids, fats break down into fatty acids. So a fatty acid, being the simplest, it's made of carbon and oxygen atoms combined in long chains with carbon and hydrogen atoms. So we have two types of lipids. We have saturated fatty acids. That means every bond is to a hydrogen already. This is a structure of a saturated one. That means there's nothing that can combine easily because it's all saturated. When you saturate something, nothing else can come in, right? It's like saturated to the most. So it has the most it can hold. That's a saturated. And then we have unsaturated fatty acid. And this is where the hydrogen can now combine with other forms. So an unsaturated means you can combine something to it. You have a mono unsaturated or a poly unsaturated, means that you can combine, or that other, not you can, but other molecules can come and combine with it. That's just what unsaturated means. It's not saturated, it is not holding as much as it can hold. It can actually hold more as unsaturated fatty acids and saturated fatty acids. Fats and fatty acids combine into larger molecules, and this one here is tristerin, or tristerin right here means 3. So it's combined into 3. 1, 2, 3 parts, right? So going on here, triglycerides, they call them. Triglycerides. Have you ever heard the word triglycerides? Probably you have. Triglycerides are animal fats, and they're solid at the room temperature, and they're mostly saturated fats. And then we have oils, which are liquid at a room temperature, so they're mostly unsaturated fats. So, and what the thing about fats is you'll find this process called adding hydrogen to it. They call it hydrogenated oils. Hydrogenated oils. And when you add hydrogen to them, it makes oils turn to be it turns oil, like the oil to margarine, to be solid, liquids to solid. So they try to hydrogenate these things, or hydrogenated these things and to make them so they can make margarine and shortening. And those are hydrogenated foods are not really good. That means processed. They're processed food. Hydrogenated oils and things in food are processed. So like snacks and certain bakery items and different things that are chemically altered, and they can be hydrogenated, make these oils, and they can chemically alternate them to make what's called trans fatty acid. Trans is not a good name. If you look on and you're looking at ingredients and you're seeing trans fats in something, that is not good for you. So these have been, the trans fatty acids have been linked to cancer sometimes, so that's important. And then of course we have cholesterol. Cholesterol right here is a good thing. Of course, it's a good thing, but it's a bad thing too if you get too much. And cholesterol is a lipid. It's a fat used to make things like bile and vitamin D and hormones. They need cholesterol. And they're found only in animal fats or some saturated plants. And you can take just these very small amounts of cholesterol help and put into these things into our body, into these hormones to make the hormones come alive, I should say. And the liver may manufacture cholesterol if it needs. So it is manufactured. But the important thing is if you're eating too much cholesterol in your diet, especially if you have heart problems, it can cause you to have atherosclerosis or arterial sclerosis, however you say. But atherosclerosis is the built-up deposits in your arteries. And so cholesterol is good, but too much, of course, can be bad. I think I'm going to stop there because we're going to go on to we are going to go on to these power plants and then on to the micro vitamins and micronutrients, which are vitamins and minerals.